So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint this watercolor snow globe. This is a really easy project, and I think it's a flexible idea because you can put any scene inside the snow globe that you want. This is a watercolor style illustration, and to get that effect, I'm using the Backrun paper texture together with the Alpine forest brushes. I'll put a link to both of those in the description, along with a link to the free snow globe sketch and the color palette so you can follow right along with me. And I've already got the sketch placed in here as the very top layer, and I've set it to multiply so it doesn't cover up what we're going to paint. And I'm going to use a blank layer down here to start painting. For the brush, I'm going to start with the fuzzy round brush, and I'll do a long press to grab this light bluish tone, and I'm going to use that at a pretty large size to fill out the snow globe. And I've gone beyond the edge of the sketch a little bit, but I'll fix that later. For now, I'm going to make a new layer and do the trees. So I'm going to grab my green color here. For the brush, I'm going to choose one of the pine tree brushes. I think they all work in this project, but I really like the silhouette pine. And I'm going to use that at a pretty large size to do all three trees. But I'm going to change the shade of green a few times, just so they're not all the same. And once you're happy with how the trees look, you can pinch and merge them together with the snow globe layer, and then use the eraser brush set to the Forster fine liner, and go in there and kind of cut out the silhouette of the house. Next, I'm going to change my brush to the fuzzy round brush again. I'm going to make another new blank layer, and I'm going to fill out the silhouette of the house using this red color. And it's okay to go beyond the sketch. I'll fix that here, but before I do that, I'm going to choose a slightly darker version of that red, and I'm going to use it to paint on a shadow just kind of underneath the eaves. And then to fix where we've gone beyond the sketch, I'm going to use the eraser brush, still set to the Forster fine liner, and I'll cut back the red. And it's optional, but if you want to make the red area a little bit more interesting, you can use that same dark color, maybe a slightly lighter version of it. And I'm going to do these kind of horizontal lines, sort of like the texture of siding. And to do the rest of the details on the house, I'm going to change my brush to the Forster fine liner. And first, I'm going to grab the window color, which is this sort of bluish gray tone, and I'll fill out all the windows and doors. And for the door frame, I'll use a dark red, but for all the windows, I'll use a slightly warm off-white color. And the chimney is really easy. I'm just going to fill it out with a brick red color, and then do a few kind of dashed lines in different shades of red to give it a brick texture. Now the roof is pure white because it's covered in snow, but if you want, you can use a really light gray tone to add a kind of scribbly texture. I know this won't show up on the camera, but I can just barely see this light gray kind of shadow effect. And as a finishing touch on the house, you can use the selection tool set to freehand, and you can just select the front of the house, and then use the hue, saturation, and brightness to brighten it just a little bit. And it makes the house look a little bit more 3D. So far, the house is on its own layer, and the background is down here. I'm going to merge them together, and I'm going to use the eraser, which is still set to the Forster fine liner, to go all along the edge of the snow globe and erase it so it fits the sketch better. And once the main scene in the snow globe is done, we can move on and start adding some snow details. And I'll make those on a blank layer above the snow globe. And I'm going to use pure white, and I'll start with adding some blowing snow. So I'm going to switch to the Snowy Speckles brush and use that in a few places. And after that, I'm going to change my brush to a default Procreate brush in the drawing tab. It's called Freycinet. And first I'm going to use it at the bottom, still set to pure white. And I'm just going to do this kind of scribbling brush stroke here, kind of like snow is building up around the house. There we go. And I'll also use it to do the smoke in the chimney. I think the sketch is too bold right now though to see it, so I'm going to lighten it. And then I'll just use the Freycinet at a couple of small sizes to do the smoke texture here, and I'm just going over it again and again. Now, I've still got a lot of blending to do on this scene, but I think now's a good time to make another blank layer, and then use the Freycinet brush to quickly sketch out the base of the snow globe, and then I'm also going to add that little red ribbon as well. Now, I'm specifically using the Freycinet brush because it looks so scratchy, and I think this pairs really nicely with the smooth blending of the watercolor. Now at this point, our scene is almost finished, so I can turn off the sketch and the color palette. And what I'm going to do next is add some blending to the scene to make it look more like watercolor. So I'm going to make sure that layer is selected, the one with the whole scene. And I'm going to use the selection tool, set to freehand. And as an example, I'll make 2 selections here in the corners. Then I'm going to use the feather option, and I'll feather it out quite a bit to soften the edges. And then I'll go to my adjustments, Gaussian blur, and if I tap and drag, you can see I can just blur that selected area. And you can see it has a nice kind of wet on wet watercolor blending effect. And I'm going to do this randomly in a bunch of different areas throughout the illustration. I just don't want to do it too much and make the scene too blurry. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good. Another kind of optional watercolor trick you can do is add a color variation effect. And to do that, again, I'll use the freehand selection tool, and I'm just going to select the upper half, and I'll feather this one out quite a bit as well. Then I can use the hue, saturation, and brightness to slightly shift the hue of that top area and introduce an interesting secondary color. I think a nice kind of bluish or purple tone looks good in this case. And at this point, the illustration could be totally done, but I want to show you how to add a glossy highlight to the glass dome on the snow globe. And that's really easy to do. I'm just going to make a blank layer that's above everything so far. And I'm going to use pure white. For the brush, I'm going to go back to the Alpine Forced kit and use the fuzzy round again. And maybe around 30 or 40% size, I'm going to make some lines like this. There we go. Then I can lower the opacity of the layer and make it super light. And it's a subtle effect, but it does add a kind of glossy shininess to the snow globe. And just like that, our snow globe is all done. And here's a closer look at the final result. And that pretty much wraps it up. If you think I've earned it, please give this video a like. And if you're looking for another kind of watercolor, winter, or Christmas themed tutorial, I think you'll love my penguin video up here.